Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are. So, today's topic is about the data security on cloud. So, Ethan, do you want me to start, or is there anything that we need to talk about? Perfect. So, so today we'll be talking about the data security on cloud. So before we begin with that, let me just give you my brief introduction. So this is Priya Pandey, and I am the manager in one of the consulting firms, global consulting firm for cybersecurity. I have around 8 years of experience in the cybersecurity, which covers data security, risk management, cloud strategy, etc. So today we will be covering the topic about data on cloud, first of all, and then we'll be talking about the data breaches on cloud and what are those trends which is picking up. Then we will also be talking about the cloud security areas and what are those shared responsibility for the data security. So before we begin with the data on cloud or in cloud, first, I wanted to highlight on why all of a sudden the data on cloud has become one of the key norms of discussion. Of course, data is something that we all are striving to secure in cybersecurity world, and something in the recent times, I won't say recent, it's been a while now, the cloud have picked up, and now we all are trying to make sure that our data is wherever it is being stored on private, public, or hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, it is kept the way it should be securely. But the amount of data being of course being produced every single day is tremendous. Like if you see the organizations, and as per the survey by EMC, it was mentioned that by 2025 it is estimated that the data will be across the world around 175 zettabytes. And since the data is really huge, at the same time the requirement of storage will also increase, and that's the reason, the cloud, the data is migrating, or the organizations are planning to shift it to store their data on cloud quite faster. And there are around 50% of the data which is being stored on the public cloud, and 75% of the data stored on the hybrid cloud. So I won't be covering about the public, private, and hybrid cloud in this session because the focus is more on the data security. So we will be mostly majorly talking about the data security key areas. Now, moving to the aspect of why the cloud and why the data is being migrated to the cloud. Of course, like I mentioned, that since the data storage or the amount of data being produced every day is quite high, and the reason why it has been picked that the organization are moving to the cloud is because, of course, it has a certain good benefits that I'll be covering in this slide. But before that, I just want to highlight that what is a cloud? It is just it's a on-demand services which is being used across the world, and it comes in many form. It can be Netflix, or it can be any IBM cloud or Dropbox for storage services. So there are multiple things available across the world, and there are three types of service model where which is being used and across the world. We'll be talking in the upcoming slides where how the shared responsibilities are being managed on that. But to highlight on that part, it's infrastructure as a service is one, platform as a service is the other one, and a SaaS is the third one, which is a software as a service. Now you will realize that like I mentioned, the data being migrated to the cloud is one of the reasons that, of course, the agility and the better performance and the improved data storage across the devices. And because of um, these functionalities, or you can say the variety of compelling reasons, there is lots and lots of data being produced, being migrated to the cloud. But at the same time, the more data being migrated to the cloud is also adds a security requirement. And one of the key threat across the cloud, which was as per the research of one of the clouds, as per the research of the Cloud Security Alliances, it was mentioned that the data breaches are the top concern for the cloud deployment. Yeah. So moving on to the data breaches on the cloud. So as per one of the survey, in 2021, we noted that around 40% of the organizations have already experienced the cloud-based data breach in the past 12 months. And it was also seen that even if there were so many breaches happening, there are organizations that are still not taking the preventive measures like encrypting the sensitive data on the cloud. Now, just to highlight on some of the key key breaches is like one of them was the Facebook, where one 540 million user records were exposed on the Amazon cloud server. Another one was on the Accenture, where the Lockbit ransomware attack happened. Now, the reason why we are talking about the data breaches right now is that cloud being across the world, they have multiple residencies where they can be one instance placed in Hong Kong, the other one can be on US. So definitely it comes with multiple region requirement from the local regulations, right? Like GDPR and also the CCPA. There's a lot of per region regular requirement which comes with the requirements to make sure that the right security controls are implemented in place. And if the organizations are not following as per their local requirement, there is a significant there is a significant issues that happens. It's like which leads to regulatory non-compliance, and then since GDPR comes with the requirement of there is some financial which has to be given to the regulatories, so it leads to the financial loss and also the reputation loss. So there's a lot of thing which goes around the data breaches if it is not being handled appropriately. So talking about then how do we actually secure? I mean, of course, we will not say that we will be prevent it 100%, but of course there are some key areas that we should be looking at to ensure that we have the right measures in place. Some of the key security areas are like the security monitoring key control, where we talk about the configuration monitoring and the theme. And then we also talk about the secure configurations like the building standardization. There's a proper policies and best practices in place, and we have a blueprints in place. Then data protection. One of the requirements is on the encryption on the data masking. Then, of course, access control is always the key control. So, thinking from the aspect of whether there is a proper entity access management in place, there is a MFA in place, and how the administrative access are being managed across. Apart from that, the network security key control, which is more on the network ACLs, their connections, and whether the segmentations are as per the requirements. So if you see that, of course, there is one more thing that we need to indicate, that zero trust is something which is picking up across the all this pillar, and it is not limited to one or the two type of workloads. It's more on the data. How do we protect them from the excess? How do we make sure there's a proper segmentation? So considering those requirements should also be part of the cloud security areas. Now, talking about that, how do we actually secure your secure data? How do we actually have the data security in place? So, just talking about the very high level on the understanding, and how do we go through step by step, is of was to actually understand where is actually your sensitive data located. So you can first identify, basically, you discover where it resides, and then you classify as per your organization requirement, like if it is a confidential data or it is a public data or a proprietary data. And then you have the certain policies assigned to type of data being handled and how it has to be handled. And then after that, you also need to consider that if there is a way that we can have an automated tool. Basically, the automated tool can help you out from the unstructured data, because there are high number of unstructured data being produced every day. And because of the limitations on the understanding where exactly your unstructured data is produced. Like when I say unstructured data, it's basically your Excel sheet, your some images, there are some log files spread all over your multiple servers. So it is a good practice that first we identify where all your data is actually stored, to make sure there's a right amount of controls in place. So moving on to the step two, which is more on the how do we secure and protect it? So once we are aware where your sensitive data is located, you can always have the understanding whether you need to have the authorized access. How do you have, whether you have an MFA in place, you have a strict least privilege requirements in place, and also you can also understand from the aspect of the where there's a right encryptions provided to the sensitive data, and as well as you can also implement the policies and the access control solutions to make sure that there's only authorized persons can access those data if necessary, like the least privileged access. And there might be the chance that like for example, that you may want customer support personnel to access the last four digit of the customer social security number, right? So, I mean, the way we need to make sure is that once when we are aware about the data where it is located, we mask some of them and only show the required ones to the respective teams or or the departments. And once we are aware about the overall data which is in place and how we are securing and monitoring it, we should have a mechanism to monitor and audit them. So we have the continuous database vulnerabilities in place. We enforce if there is any policy exception in place, and we monitor them regularly, and then ensure that there is a proper auditing of the logging in place, so that if there is any unauthorized access being done, it can be easily flagged and there's a right number of cases being assigned. So moving on to the shared responsibility for the data security. So like I mentioned that we will be talking about the three types of the service models. Like if you see that the blue ones, which is actually says the highlights the provider managed, what that means that this is being handled by the CSPs, and then the enterprise manager are something which is being handled by the customers. So considering from the security requirement, so please keep in mind is that data uh, in the cloud, or the security of in the cloud, is the responsibility of the customer, whereas uh, the the service provider is responsible for doing the proper security in the cloud, and then the customers are responsible of the cloud. So basically, just to consider from the aspect that there is a proper shared responsibilities in place, whether depending on the type of service model, we understand what, how, and what are the source key security controls needs to be implemented. Like from the aspect of the IS, the cloud service provider will be only responsible for maintaining those host servers and maintaining the hardening and the place, whereas rest of um, the the configuration data software has to be managed by the customer. So these have been defined in the type of service models. So now thinking from that governance aspect, in any organization, I mean, it's just a model that we can always follow, is that they have a three line of support, where the first line of three line of defense, first line is responsible for the standard and the procedures and implementation and the operations. And then the key things they need to do is that there's a configuration management in place, incident management in place, there's a risk and control in place. And the second line is something which is more from the governance oversight and the policy framework. So there is a appropriate risk validation, resilience validation, and the control performance. And whereas the third line of defense is responsible for the independent opinion and the audit and the review, where they do the control checking and validate the overall understanding whether it's been performed as per the requirement. So typically, this is something that has been followed across normally in the on-prem as well. So this is how we can also think from the aspect of how we can leverage the similar kind of model for the cloud governance for the security of data. Now, talking about the shared responsibilities, best practices. So there are a few points that we need to understand apart from those, the very high level aspect, that what are those cloud security in the cloud and off the cloud. We should also be understanding before we sign up any contract or before we understand any discussion with the cloud service provider. We should be also looking at some of the key requirements, which is not limited to the first we need to understand whether the SLA which we sign up is carefully read and understood. So the reason why we say that is that there might be a chance that you have already taken a SLA, and if there is any change or any potential new service that you want to add up, we should not be relying on the existing SLA. We should be thoroughly understand if there is any difference or if there is any gray area, to understand if there is any change in the, because if there is any slight change in the wording, the organizations, you know, are actually, they are left vulnerable in the security risk. And especially for, if you think from the aspect of the organization operating in the multi-cloud environment, it is crucial that each SLA are individually reviewed, and they are, if there is any small difference across these agreements, it must be factored in the overall cloud security strategy and architectures. Apart from that, we should also be prioritizing on the data security, because the cloud customer are always responsible for any data stored in the cloud or produced in the application in the cloud. So, organization must always develop a robust security strategy specifically designed to protect the cloud-based data, whether it is the data in use or at rest or in motion. At the same time, thinking from the aspect of the robust identity and access management, like we mentioned earlier, um, in terms of the shared responsibility best practices, we should also be considering that there is a because the complete responsibilities again lies with the cloud customer in terms of the identity and access management as well. So the cloud customer, they need to ensure that the granting the access or this and providing the access should be only given to the authorized users. And apart from that, there is a requirement on on the DevSecOps, which is more from the aspect of if there is any pass or the ICE type of model being used, we need to understand that there is a shift left concept which is being used, and ensuring that the security operations or the security plays an important role in every aspect of the development. Apart from that, since SLA is something which is always taken care by the procurement teams, and there's always a chance that we might miss out the requirement from the security advisors. If we're signing up any SLAs or any discussion with the cloud service provider, we should also be considering from the aspect that what are those key things which will be changed in terms of the security, and if there is anything that we need to understand from the regularly or the continuous increase of the cloud risk is being considered. So whenever we try to connect, when we go for any SLA sign up, and especially from the shared responsibility perspective, we should also be considering whether the security advisors, whether they are hired internally or the externally, they should be aware about the key responsibilities being given to the customer before they sign up. So, talking about the organization responsibility in the data security. So, like I mentioned, like just to recap, that there's a MFA should be in MFA should be is part of every cloud. There should be data classification and the management. There should be SaaS data security in place. And talking from the PaaS and IS aspect data security, we should be considering encryption, key management, IAM, and the logging and monitoring. And from the employee aspect, we should be looking from the aspect of data security in terms of the shadow IT, because PaaS and SaaS is, of course, being managed from the security operation team, or you have application security team, or any security-based team which is being handling that. But what about the issues or the those kind of risk which is being highlighted or which can be done, which can impact the employees, and of course, which is coming from the employees? There are a lot of SaaS applications which is being used, which can lead to shadow IT applications. And the reason why we use normally is like sometimes the some of the marketing team, they end up signing up for the MailChimp or any survey link where they end up collecting the customer data or any employee data, and which is being stored on the third party, where the IT is not at all aware about the data being stored. And like I mentioned, that data residency or the data classification can only be done if you're aware where your data is stored. So because of these kind of situations, of these kind of patterns, the organization end up not protecting the customer data, and if there is any leakage happening, it directly tends to impact the organization. At the same time, thinking from the employee responsibilities, they should also understand, you can say they can be mindful of clicking any phishing emails, also making sure that there is no they make sure whenever they click any link they're aware what they're doing, and of course with the help of the training, which is normally the norm of the all the organization, they should make sure that they do not click any link which looks like a suspicious email. So the few highlight that we wanted to talk about is on the shadow IT is that they need to understand the risk involved in the SaaS application. They can avoid uploading the confidential data on the cloud and the SaaS application, and they should also avoid the storage of application of any data, any organization data on the SaaS based applications. So the key takeaways for this session is like there's with the increase of the dependency on the data, the cloud, the risk of data has also increased, and the data security is actually a shared responsibility, and security in the cloud is responsibility of the customer. So that's it from my side. Thank you.